Well, hello there. Welcome to the Total Woman Show. This is Dr. Barbara Young, and I'm excited to be here this week with our spotlight guest, Miss Jennifer Conkey. Hi, welcome, Jennifer. Glad to have you on the show. And with me are my two co-hosts, Dr. Carol Soloway, medical examiner, chiropractor day, and by night she is an author. Happy to have you on the show. You're always welcome to be with me and my great co-host over here, Miss Caitlin Chen, who also has her own television show on the network, Millennial Money Minute. And so I'm happy to have you on the show too.
Thank you
so much for being a co-host today. All right. Well, you know what? We're off and rocking because, you know, one of the things today we're going to talk about, women in leadership. We know that even today in 2019, we're still not in parity as it relates to women in leadership roles. There's been a lot of controversy about who is a leader, you know, who should be a leader, women entrepreneurs. How do we describe them? What are some of the things that we should be aware today as it relates to leadership? And so you ladies have all experienced and been in leadership. Now, one of the things I want to say too is that we've explained to people, and you have too in your career, that leadership begins where?
With you.
With you, yeah. You are the president, CEO of your own corporation. But oftentimes people mistake leadership, women in particular, that I have to be a business owner or I have to be head of this organization. You're head of a very large women's organization.
Well,
you have
only Orange County chapter.
But I was going to refine that. But it's a large women's organization and you're the head of a chapter of that women's organization. You've been head of an organization that you've been involved in leadership role. Now, the reason why I'm mentioning that, before we get to the point that I want you to share your background, is that you can be a leader if it's the leader in your family and you do the potlucks every year. That's leadership. So I think oftentimes we mistake, I guess, this mystique about what is leadership. So today, Jennifer, I know you have a company called LeadHERship, and it's LEAD capital HERSHIP. So we want to know, who is Jennifer, and tell us a little bit about your journey.
Sure. So I actually came from a leadership background in corporate America.
Okay.
So I started off when I was about 19, and I spent some time at about 22 years. During that time, I struggled in a male-dominated industry, and I learned some things. And I learned that leadership is actually about influence and our ability to influence others. So for me, when you ask what is leadership, I say it's ability to influence. You can influence performance, sales, you can influence change. It's all about influence and how you impact others.
So where did you grow up?
I actually grew up in Long Beach. Well, I started in Sacramento, then I ended up in Long Beach, the Long Beach area. Yep, so I had a little bit of time up in Sacramento, so I did some Northern California, and then I did Southern California. I spent a lot of my time in the South Bay area, and then I actually ended up in Quartz Hill, going to Quartz Hill High School, so out in the desert in the boonies. And then I ended up going to Arizona, so a little bit of the West Coast.
Okay.
Yeah.
So did you get your start in corporate, you know, in corporations?
I did. I started off when I was 19. I got offered this opportunity to be a supervisor at a manufacturing plant that manufactured airbags. It was back in the early 90s. I was 19 years old. There was a lot of male-dominated workforce there. And so coming in as a 19-year-old,
Wow.
they were like, well, I don't want to listen to you, little girl. What are you doing here? And I thought, well, I don't know. They told me I was good at leading. And so I learned how to lead myself, and then I learned how to influence others. And in that process, I ended up for about an 8-year period in that time frame looking at what can I do to teach other people. So I became a mentor to people, and then I ended up going to Target Corporation. I worked at Home Depot, and I did a lot of things. And then in 2015, I decided to just take the leap and start my own business. So,
wow. Yeah. Now, when you were in high school, this is a burning question with me, when you said you knew how to lead, where did you get that confirmed? Was it?
I would have to say that I learned a lot from my father, right? So he was very regimented. He was about planning. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail.
Wow.
And that just carried with me. He had a lot of structure. And so when I started off at a young age in this manufacturing plant, I had a lot of other people that were working with me side by side. So I was really good at leading peers. And so I could lead without a title, you know? And my supervisor at the time came to me and said to me, you're very good at influencing and getting people to get things done, even though you're not their boss. And how do you do it? And of course, I was 19. I don't know. right? I have no idea. You know, we're not really self-aware on what we do or how we do it at a young age. So I spent the better part of 20 through 28 figuring out who I was, how I ticked, and how I led. And so I had several mentors. I invested in myself and my development, and became very accountable and aware of what that process looked like. And through that process, I learned and mastered these 7 strategies on how to influence. And I learned a lot about reading people's body language, you know, and just learning how they prefer to communicate. You know, and are they visual? Are they auditory? Are they a feeler? And then how can I help them?
Did you read the book by Julius Fast, which is called Body Language?
I actually didn't.
Okay.
So a little trick for you, or a little tidbit of information. When I was about 27 years old, I had a
Well,
leader.
aren't you 27 now?
I was
I
going to go
know she
there.
looks 27.
I'm actually, yes, I am. I'm just kidding. I'm actually going to be on level
So are we.
45.
Exactly.
I'll be level 45 on September 23rd. And I don't age, I level up.
Okay.
So,
There we go.
Yeah. So
I've leveled up quite a bit, I guess.
I can't wait as soon as I'm in that level to still be operating at your level.
Yeah.
So this gentleman that was a mentor to me when I was about 26, 27 years old, he came to me and he asked me some questions about, hey, what are you going to do and how are you going to get out there and do some of these things to lead people, because you know you wear your emotions on your sleeve. And I thought, oh, what does that mean? And my sleeve, right? And he challenged me to learn how to play poker so that I could develop my poker face and read other people's body language. So I did that. I started playing poker at a pretty young age, about 20, 24. And that's how I learned how to read people. And he said, you'll learn really quick when you, as much money as you're
on
going
the
to,
table.
Yeah.
exactly. So my money on the table, I lost a lot, and I learned a lot. So I consider that the first investment in myself.
Now, Jennifer, I have a question. A lot of leaders, they find it okay to play favoritism. Let's just say they have a lot of employees, and they like to play favoritism with a few. How detrimental is that to the business?
It's very detrimental. And that, that comes from a limiting belief. I'm a big advocate of figuring out what your limiting beliefs are, but that comes from a limiting belief that I have to make sure people approve of me and like me. So I don't really want to hold everybody accountable. And if I like somebody, I'm going to treat them the way that I want to treat them and the way that I want them to treat me. And then the other people kind of look at it as, well, what about me? And then the leadership team fails and everybody starts to kind of have some competition with each other. So it does, it's
But
detrimental.
you can't like everyone equally, can you? I mean, help us.
No, that's a very good question. And you cannot like everybody equally. When you think about rapport, to get into rapport with somebody. So if I like you,
Please.
right? If I like you and you like me, you ever have those conversations with people and it's like, wow, that went really well. Like, it feels like I've known them a long time. Or you have a conversation with somebody and you're like, oh man, I don't know what happened there. I don't know why I didn't influence them. The thing is that when you establish rapport, you get into that, it's a process of responsiveness. So you don't have to like each other, but you do need to get into a process of responsiveness. So, and that's the thing that leaders need to understand.
Right.
So,
Great point.
yeah.
So we don't have to necessarily like the person, but we have to have a rapport. Okay.
Definitely get into rapport. And there's a lot of different ways that you can do that. Body language
That was
is one
my
of
question.
them. Body language is one of them. So some people don't realize that communication is 7% of the words that you say. It's 38% the tone you use, but 55% is body language. And people give off information using their body language. I know right now all of us are sitting really with good posture, but most of the time a visual person's going to be sitting pretty, sitting up. They're going to talk faster. Auditory people tend to talk to themselves. And then you have the kinesthetic people who like to touch and, Barbara's a little bit kinesthetic, right? And
little
so
bit?
when you identify body language first, because it's 55% and I can see visually and I observe people, then when I listen to the words they use. So if they're saying things like, well, I see that you came here early, that's awesome, and it's so good to get to know you, I feel like, so the predicate words that they use can give you some indication on how they prefer to be communicated with, and then you can influence them better.
So it's not all black and white. It's all relative. You have to observe and treat them as they want to be treated.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
But what I have found, and I have to be very truthful, a lot of women who they take on leadership roles, actually many of them do not know who they are. And so they tend to gravitate towards people who will accept them. They cannot take criticism. They can't take an employee that may not find everything they say, or will find a little fault or something. And then all of a sudden it causes a distraction. And we're having more and more, I think, women in the industry, and particularly some of our younger women, the millennials, who are getting into leadership roles pretty fast. How do you address that? And have you dealt with a lot of millennial clients and they want to grow and they want to grow fast? They don't want to take a slow process and learn themselves first as leaders. Because first, you're the president, CEO of your own corporation. And you talked about you went on self-growth to understand more about who you were. Because I advocate you can't give what you don't have.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
I mean, many women do try.
Yes.
And it's maybe what they call, we just talked about the imposter syndrome. But really, I want you to just sort of address what you see in terms of a millennial woman and women who want to grow and be leaders fast, but it's more autocratic rather than inclusive.
Sure. So I do see a lot of that. And in today's society, with the iPhones, and you get everything really quick. You can't hold somebody's attention for more. In the first 3 to 5 seconds, if you don't have them, you've lost them. And then in the millennial world, they want, I even told my son, who's only going to be 8, that you can't take the elevator to success. And he said, well, I'm going to take the escalator. Right? And I thought, oh my goodness.
Smart boy.
Right? So, and that's just what it is. They either want to take the elevator or the escalator. They do want that quick burn. And one of the things that I always say, there's this book by Kevin Cashman. It's called Leadership from the Inside Out. And it was one of the very first leadership books that really opened my eyes to who I am, my shadow beliefs about people in general, myself in general, and really how to lead authentically. And you can't do that unless you know yourself. So the clients that I have, I will come in and I will ask them their questions. I get them on a development plan, and then I will teach them skills, but I make them go practice. Because without the real world practice, you gotta fall. You gotta fail in order to learn. And they might want, I'll ask them, do you want this path? Or do you want this path? Or are you looking for this path? Because if you want this one, I can give it to you. It's gonna be a little painful, but you gotta get out there and learn the lessons. And so those are some of the things that I do with those clients. And I will see some clients that are, they've been around at least 15 years in a leadership capacity. They're a little bit more inclined and cautious. They're the ones that are saying, well, I don't get taken seriously. And it kind of goes back to what you said, when they're trying to get results, but they don't want to have that confidence base because they don't know themselves enough, and they can't get that confidence until they get out there and do it. So a lot of it stems back to the confidence factor and repetition in a skill that they're trying to learn. And that's what I try to get in their minds.
Have you ever taken a survey of women leaders or some of the clients have you done a survey,
I absolutely
research
have.
survey? Okay.
Absolutely.
What have you found have been some of the difficulties or challenges that they face?
So the biggest challenge that I see and that I hear is I can't get results because I'm in a man's world. And when
But isn't that a cop-out?
It is.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm
we
sorry.
we all rolled our eyes. Yeah.
And ironically, I have interviewed hundreds of men and women. Okay, both. I wanted to look at both sides of the fence because we were hearing, I can't do this because I'm in a man's world. And I thought, what does gender have to do with your results? To me, it doesn't have anything to do with your results. Your skill set does, right? And so if your skill set is something that you're honing in on and constantly developing, why in the world would your gender matter? But they have it in their head that they can't do the same things. And then they get into the role in a corporation or in an industry where they get a little PTSD, if you will, working with stronger personalities. And then they come see me. So some of the things that I identified during the process of interviewing these folks is that, there's a lot of things that they do that are in common with when you're successful. These people who are successful, whether it's a man or a woman, they do the things, they're afraid, but they do it anyway. They look for opportunities. They don't say no, they say yes first. And even if they don't know how to do it, they go figure it out, right? And I'm a living model of that. So those are two common themes. The third one is accountability. Serious accountability. So being able to go in and say, hey, I messed up. This is where I messed up. Here's what I would do differently next time, and here's what I learned, is very critical. People don't want to take responsibility. And so the successful people do. And when you get down to that level of success, they have a routine every day, right? And they have a routine and they can ask for feedback and they don't get their feelings hurt. It's not personal. And the difference is those that take it personal usually have that victim mentality of gender.
But that's
gender
because they
mattering.
really haven't done that internal searching
Yes.
and the internalization that they need. I have a real burning question, because this whole thing about leadership and what we're dealing with, cultural differences in leadership styles and management. What I found when we start looking at diversity in terms of leadership, cultural differences, that I have found that there are females from a particular culture, because they came from more of an autocratic, top-down initiated family situation. They get into a leadership role and they have that same autocratic, top-down initiated leadership style. And it's cultural. And I had difficulties, in trying to help women understand that, but it's their framework where they came from. So have you talked to any of your clients about that? Because they bring that, and we can't get work done with an autocratic leadership style.
No, we absolutely can't. And that model it's not effective, because you got to get commitment, right?
Right.
I've always said you got to get commitment,
Right.
compliance, or nothing, but you should always spend the majority of your calories on getting commitment. But to answer your question, yes, I have. So I have clients that will come, and we're all just a subject of what we've been programmed to do, and culture does have a lot to do with that. I will do breakthrough sessions with these women and just walk through. Here are some of the things that have set up and framed who you are and your belief systems and how that's limiting you. And then I have a process. So I'm a certified hypnotherapist, and I do a mental and emotional release tactic that I learned from Dr. Matt James, for anybody that wants to know. But he taught me this process of eliminating baggage related to things from your childhood or just life in general, and how some of that baggage may have shaped your beliefs and how those beliefs limit you. And then I can go in, and I know how to sort of neurologically help you eliminate a belief and install a new one. And so I do that with these clients so that they gain some confidence and some perspective on how to change. And then from there, once I've done that, I teach them the 7 ways to strategically influence people.
Well, tell me this, what was your greatest challenge?
In this,
Just in life.
Oh, my
What
greatest
has
challenge?
been your greatest challenge? Because we kind of segued into leadership, but I really want to put the focus back on you and some of your challenges, and how did you overcome them?
Sure. So my greatest challenge in life has always been that as I'm out there as a strong, assertive female leader, and in the 90s, my biggest challenge was I did have an autocratic style.
I suspect
I did have that style, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And so I had gentlemen that came up to me, and they were 45 at the time, so they're my age now. And I thought, oh, they have so much knowledge. And they would tell me, oh, Jen, come here. And they took me under their wing, right? That's why I have a lot of concern about the Me Too thing and how men are kind of backing off from developing and mentoring women. I had a lot of men that helped mentor me. And if we don't have that diversity in thought, I'm a little concerned. But my biggest challenge was being that assertive, autocratic style and having to transform that into something more effective, which is why I learned the 7 strategies to influence.
Did you find it difficult working with your superiors or those beneath you?
Um,
The reason, no, I'm going to tell you why I asked this question.
Yeah, it's a good question. Go ahead.
Because people with the autocratic leadership style, and I'm coming from experience, lead up very well,
Yes.
but they don't lead down well. In other words, your superiors, you were like, great performers. But the people that work, no, this is the autocratic style. I found, this is not saying you, but in general, they relate well to their superiors, but they do not to the people that report to them.
I
Because
actually observed the same thing.
they're used to looking
Jesus.
up and getting the praise from there.
Yes.
And don't really know how to work with is that,
It's
I mean, you're the expert.
It is
so.
absolutely true, and that is what I struggled with. Is because in the beginning I had a very strong relationship with my boss, but I was seeking validation. I wanted the atta
You want to
girl.
please,
I wanted the atta girl.
I get those accolades.
Validation. I'm doing good,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And a lot of that does stem from upbringing and what
Yes,
validation you were
yes,
looking for,
yes.
right? And so that was the hardest part, was transitioning that to how do I now influence others while still managing up in an effective way, but how do I be a voice for my own people
Or bring them
and bring them
with
along?
you.
And one of the greatest things that I learned is that it is so much easier to manage exclusion than it is to manage inclusion. And that was what I spent the majority of my 20s learning, is how to bring other people along. I had a mentor that taught me, you got to be responsible for your wake. And when you think about a boat just kind of flying through the lake and their wake coming up in the aftermath that it leaves behind, I would just come through and say, I really need you to do this. Can you go do this? Okay, thank you. I need it done by this time. And they're like, well, how about good morning? So that was a big transition for me. That was a big challenge for me. Absolutely. That's why I learned what I learned and how I had that breakthrough.
Or hearing about their weekend. I mean, I'm running a practice here and I'm sitting and listening to their weekend. But you have to, because that's their life. That's who they are.
Right.
And you have to validate and value them. And it's like, oh my goodness, it's like 15 minutes and I'm listening to their weekend. But that's so important.
But that's a part of life, and that's a part of
Absolutely.
because I was in academia for so many years, and rather than the corporate world, it's building consensus and having the open door policy and being able to relate to your peers and those who work with you. And so I learned some very valuable lessons, but I've always been inclusive anyway. So the thing for me was, what I found is when you roll your sleeves up and you work with them as hard as they do, they will respect you because they know you're not sitting in this high office.
Right.
And then, we had mailings to get out sometimes, and these were the days where you really had, do and lick
My kids
whatever.
lick those
telling you,
stamps
and I would
for
get out there
hours.
with my staff, and we would get that mailing out, and they were surprised because no one had ever done that in my leadership role at the time. So it is important, but I learned lessons, just intuitively.
Right, just lead by example.
Right.
I think it'll make your employees work harder.
So your experiences, Caitlin, because you've been a leader for quite a while in a financial institution.
Yes, I was a branch manager.
So share a little bit too. I mean, about what has it been for you with leadership experiences?
I think, I really enjoyed it, my time as a leader, and I did lead by example. I would never have somebody else do something that I wouldn't do myself. And I think I wanted to ask you, Jennifer, in regards to hiring. One of the biggest things, sometimes I would make a mistake in hiring someone that didn't really fit the job.
Yeah.
And most of the time I did okay. I would say 20% of the time I made mistakes. Now here's where you come in, you're the expert. What is the most important thing to look for? Give me top 3 things to look for when hiring.
I think that when you're doing an assessment, first of all, performance comes down to skill or will, right? So
Oh, that's good.
do they have the skill to do it? And more importantly, do they have the will to do it?
Yep.
And so when you're managing through performance or in an interview process, I always like to ask behavior-based questions and say, hey, tell me about a time when you had to redirect the focus of a team. And then I listen to what they say. And if they're saying things like, oh, I did this, I did that, and they're not really talking about the we or how they led, then that's a red flag for me. And then I think, oh, they're the 19 to 25-year-old Jen. And we don't want that. I want to figure out how can I bring some value. And so when I ask those questions and I listen to those words, I'm listening for, and they manage inclusion. They bring others along. They have the skill sets to lead. They have the skill sets to manage. And they have the will. So one of the questions that I'll ask is, what makes you jump out of bed in the morning? And what makes you hit snooze? And when I hear the things that they say when they want to hit snooze, then I know, well, how long will they have the will and how long will they be motivated? Are they motivated by the carrot or the stick? And then that gives me some idea. So in hiring them, I try to stick with behavior-based questions. 3 things I'm looking for is, are they kind, like in their approach and their tone? Do they know how to speak to people? Do they know how to influence? And then do they have the skill sets that they're saying they have on their resume?
Right.
Because I can ask questions to find out if they do. And then, are they going to have the will to come in and make a difference? Right?
I'm laughing about
I love
something. When you said you have to do what, don't expect anyone to do what you wouldn't do as a leader. One of the woman in my office used to say that you and I are like Lucy and Ethel in the chocolate factory, because we were both running with the patients and working, and you do it and you do it. So that's real teamwork that is so important.
And it's fun.
Right. And I think that increased her will.
Yes.
Because she definitely had the skill, but increased her will when she sees that you're you're rolling up your sleeves, as you said, and doing the same thing. And that was like, I'll never forget that comment, Lucy and Ethel in the chocolate factory. Yep,
I love
let's
it.
go.
One of my biggest tactics that I try to teach and influence is involvement.
That's
Right?
where I'm going.
It's involvement. So if you have a big change that you're trying to drive and you go to the team and you say, here's all the rational reasons and the rational persuasion on why, here's why I think you'll be good at it, and what do you think? As soon as you ask somebody, what do you think? They get involved. And then you get them, you validate
Well,
it
tell
and
me,
move it
what do
forward.
you think about this? We have got to close this show.
Wow, that
believe
went
we're
so
out of time? Can you believe we're out of time?
I don't have the will for closing. No,
But she has the skill.
I know.
She's going to close anyway.
But I tell you, this has
good.
been so exciting. So will you come back
I absolutely will.
next week so we can do part 2?
Sure.
Because I haven't even got to the 7 steps of influencing people. I want to get to the 7 steps. Boy, but this has really been, I think, very informative. We've talked about leadership from various aspects of it, and really, really want to thank you for tuning in today to our show with Jennifer Conkey. And I hope I'm pronouncing your
You
last
are.
name right.
Yeah.
Jennifer Conkey! Yay! Let's give it up for Jennifer.
Yay.
Thank you so
Thank you very
much. Boy, you have a lot to share. We're going to talk about these tattoos. Oh, by the way, before I close the show, she was a tattoo model. Wow. And it's all here. The story. And she said she got it for free. I'm going to find out. Inquiring minds want to know. So stay tuned for next week because we want to find out. Okay, and thank you so much for listening to the Total Woman Show. This is Dr. Barbara Young, and I'm signing off until next week with another episode with Jennifer Conkey. So thank you, and my co-host,
Thank
Carol,
you.
and Dr. Carol. and
I'm not a co-host.
Yeah, and my guest for
Yay.
today. Thank you guys so much.